So someday you'd like to retire. You'd like to be financially secure and able to live the retirement you've dreamed about. How much is that going to take? And what percentage of your current income should you be saving now to ensure you get there? Stay tuned. Saving for retirement. How much do you need to save? Coming up. It's Jeff Drayton, Certified Financial Planner Professional and founder of Jeffrey A. Drayton Financial Planning and Wealth Management, LLC. If you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're viewing this from my website, fill out the sign-up form at the top of the blog page so that we can contact you when new content becomes available. Some days ago, I was listening to a local radio call-in show, and the topic was personal financial questions answered by a pro. A woman called in and asked this question: is saving 10% of my income enough for retirement? I'll be honest, I don't remember what the answer was. They had a panel of experts, one of them a local certified financial planner professional that I both know and very much respect. But the truth is, in that format, a call-in show, a meaningful answer to that question is next to impossible, which is too bad because it's a great question. To paraphrase the caller, she was simply asking, how much do I need to be saving now to have enough in retirement? And who doesn't want to know the answer to that? But I will tell you why she didn't get a simple yes or no to her 10% question, and hopefully provide a more meaningful answer than that radio show in the process. I can do this because, well, I'm going to take 10 or 12 minutes for my answer instead of the 15 to 30 seconds that those panelists had. And spoiler alert, in the end, you're not going to have the exact answer that's right for you. That would require knowing your situation. But I will tell you what the variables are and how it is that professional financial planners such as myself come up with the savings recommendations that we make to our clients. So, here goes. First off, you might ask the question, is the answer actually a percentage? Looking at different types of government-regulated savings plans, one might get the idea that it's a dollar amount. For example, in 2019, individuals are allowed to contribute $6,000 to an IRA, $7,000 if they are over the age of 50, and $18,500 to their employer-sponsored 401k. So, is the IRS saying that's how much you need to save? Well, no, I doubt that's their intent. Certainly, different plans and their contribution limits are going to influence how and where to save and will likely have a big impact on the strategies that your financial planner uses to help you make your savings dollars be most efficient. But that's not guidance as to the amount that needs to be put away. For that, a savings percentage is actually a pretty good strategy. This is because step one in determining how much you need to save is to first figure out how much we think you are going to need in retirement. And that amount is, to a large degree, a function of the lifestyle that you hope to maintain. A lifestyle that was set during your working years, which is highly correlated to what your income level was during that time. So, let's do some math. Here's a calculation for an example couple considering some of the variables that I just mentioned. This is Angela and Rick. They are the same age and they are planning to retire 20 years from now when they are age 65. Currently, their combined income is $160,000 a year, and this has been going up by approximately 4% annually. This means that 20 years from now, when they retire, Rick and Angela are going to be living on income of approximately $350,000. This is simply $160,000 inflated by 4% annually for the next 20 years. It would seem reasonable that they are not going to need that full amount as income when they retire. At that time, there will be some expenses that they will no longer have to pay. For example, when they no longer have income, payroll taxes such as Social Security and Medicare will go away. And any money that they were saving towards retirement by contributing to things such as their 401ks or IRAs will also now be gone. But let's assume that they will still need 80% of their pre-retirement income. That comes to $280,000. Angela and Rick are anticipating that they will receive Social Security. Rick expects his benefit to be approximately $30,000 annually, and Angela anticipates a bit less, closer to $20,000. Also, Angela has a pension that is projected to pay her $40,000 a year and provides a cost of living adjustment that should mean that it will keep pace with inflation. This means that Angela and Rick now have an annual income need from their retirement assets of about $190,000. We can determine the pool of assets that Angela and Rick will need to provide that $190,000 of annual income, but to do so, here again, we are going to have to input a few variables. First, we need to determine the expected length of time that Angela and Rick will need this income. Life expectancy in the United States is right around 80 years old. However, since this is an average, it makes sense that we need to err on the side of caution and project a life expectancy that is higher. In my calculation, I'm going to project out to age 90. We also need to decide on a rate of return that we can get on Angela and Rick's pool of assets during retirement. And since this is money that Angela and Rick will be living on, their investment portfolio needs to provide both an investment return as well as ensure the protection of their principal. I'm going to project an overall rate of return during retirement of 6%. However, I'm also going to adjust this rate of return to account for an anticipated rate of inflation during their retirement years. So with all of that said, how much will they need? Well, my calculation comes to right around $3.5 million. Now that we know what savings amount is required, it's a fairly easy calculation to determine the percentage of Angela and Rick's current income that they will need to set aside to reach this goal. Of course, before we make that calculation, we do need to know how much have they saved so far. And since that amount is going to be different for every couple or household, so too is the percentage from current income that they are going to need to be setting aside going forward. However, as an example, I'm going to do this. Let's imagine that Angela and Rick, like the caller suggested, always saved 10% of their income from the day they began their professional careers and continued until age 65 when they hope to retire. Would that get them to the $3.5 million that they need to fully fund their retirement? If I assume that Angela and Rick began their professional work life at age 25 and that they have always experienced on average a 4% increase in pay, that would mean they began their careers 20 years ago earning approximately a combined $73,000. Saving 10% of their income from ages 25 to 65 with that assumed income and earning an 8% return on their savings portfolio would result in them reaching retirement with a nest egg of approximately $3.4 million. So yes, pretty close to what they need. And this assumes that they saved that 10% of income receiving no additional dollars, such as employer matching contributions, along the way. However, how much would they have were they to have begun their retirement savings at age 35, a decade later? Well, in that case, their nest egg would be worth slightly more than $2 million, about $1.5 million short. Beginning at age 35, to get to that same $3.4 million as before, Angela and Rick would have to save closer to 17% of their income. And if Angela and Rick were only starting now, well, in that case, getting to $3.4 million of retirement savings will require them to save 31% of their current income, pretty close to 1 out of every $3 that they make. So hopefully it is now a bit clearer as to why the answer to the question, how much should I be saving towards my retirement, is not such an easy and straightforward answer to provide. The truth is, it depends. Many factors come into play. However, one that is hopefully now quite obvious is this: the sooner you start saving, the better. And one last point. In my example, when Angela and Rick began their retirement savings at age 25, they not only achieved a savings nest egg of $3.4 million with a lifetime savings percentage of only 10%, the overall amount of money that they put away from their earnings was approximately $730,000. The remaining $2,670,000 was returns on their investments. Should they wait to begin saving until age 45, not only will they then have to dedicate 31% of their income to achieve the same retirement savings, the total amount that they will have put into their savings is now close to $1.6 million. That 20-year delay means it will now cost them over twice as much to save the same amount of money. I'm Jeff Drayton. Thanks for watching. everyone. As always, nothing in this video is meant to be specific advice for you. Advice like that can only be had by working with a financial planner, someone who knows you and your situation. I would encourage you to seek out someone who is a certified financial planner. This is signified by the letters CFP with the registered trademark sign following his or her name. I would also encourage you to work with a fee-only financial planner. Now that's two words, fee-only, not fee-based, not fee plus commission. Both of those terms mean that the planner or advisor can receive commissions and is therefore not free of the conflict of interest inherent to commission sales. Again, I'm Jeff Drayton. Thanks for watching.